Hello students, how are you all? No doubt, you all have enjoyed the chapter Improvement in Food Resources, all 5 parts. And even, definitely, you might have discussed your plan with your parents to start one new business. Either cattle farming, poultry farming, apiculture or pisciculture. Some of you are super smart and would have planned for integrated farming. I think I'm absolutely right. Bindu is back with an interesting topic, diversity in living organisms. This topic is very important to each and every individual. Everyone should know that every living thing got a particular name or nomenclature, isn't it? So, let's focus on learning objectives. Multitude of life forms that surround us. What is the basis of classification? Classification and evolution. What is the need of classification? Keywords. Evolution. The process of acquiring change during the history of the earth. Classification. A systematic arrangement in groups or categories according to established criteria. Characteristics. It is a particular feature or a particular function. Concept map. Have you ever thought of the multitude of life forms that surround us? Each organism is different from the other to a lesser or greater extent. We have microscopic bacteria of a few micrometers in size, while on the other hand, we have blue whale and redwood trees in California of approximate sizes of 30 meters and 100 meters respectively. Some pine trees live for thousands of years. Life also ranges from colorless or even transparent worms to brightly colored birds and flowers. This bewildering or confusing variety of life around us have evolved on the earth over millions of years. However, we do not have time to try and understand all these living organisms. So, we cannot look at them one by one. Instead, we look for similarities among the organisms, put them into different classes or groups and study them as a whole. This is the right idea. Let's go in deep. What is the basis of classification? Attempts on classifying living things into groups have been made since time immemorial. Greek thinker Aristotle classified animals based on their habitats, like animals living on land, in water, or in the air. This is a very simple way of looking at life but misleading too. For example, animals that live in the sea include corals, whales, octopuses, starfish, and sharks. We can immediately see that these are very different from each other in numerous ways. They match only in habitat. As there is no base to classify them, this is not an appropriate way of making groups of organisms to study and think about. Then how to classify? We need to decide which characteristics to be used as the basis for making the broadest divisions. Oh, what are the characteristics? Characteristic is a particular feature or a particular function. We can build up a whole hierarchy of mutual related characteristics to be used. For example, we have different shapes and sizes of stones. The stones at the top of the wall would not influence the choice of stones that come below them. On the other hand, the shapes and sizes of stones in the lowermost layer will decide the shape and size of the next layer, and so on. The stones in the lowermost layer are like the characteristics that decide the broadest divisions among living organisms. Means, firstborn organisms decide the characteristic feature of the recent ones. Characteristics used for a hierarchical classification. Eukaryotic cell has membrane born organelles, including a nucleus which allows cellular processes to be carried out efficiently. Therefore, organisms which do not have a demarcated nucleus and other organelles would need to have their biochemical pathways organized in very different ways. This would have an effect on every aspect of cell design. Further, nucleated cells would have the capacity to participate in making a multicellular organisms because they can take up specialized functions. Therefore, the nucleus can be a basic characteristic of classification. The characteristics of body design used for the classification of plants will be very different from those for classifying animals. This is because the basic designs are different based on the need to make their own food or plants or acquire it or animals. Therefore, these design features having a skeleton, for example, are to be used to make subgroups rather than making broad groups. Classification and evolution. Characteristics that came into existence earlier are likely to be more basic than characteristics that have come into existence later. This means that the classification of life forms will be closely related to their evolution. What is evolution? Evolution is the process of acquiring change. Most life forms that we see today had variations that accumulated over years to allow the organism possessing them to survive better. Charles Darwin first described this idea of evolution in 1859 in his book, The Origin of Species. The organisms in the first group are frequently referred to as primitive or lower organisms, while those in the second group are called advanced or higher organisms. When we connect this idea of evolution to classification, we may say that older organisms are simpler as compared to younger. This again shows some irrelevance, so may not be right. Many scientists tried their best to classify all the organisms into groups. Look at this table. History of classification. Out of all these, finally, Whittaker got succeeded in classifying the organisms, and this was approved. Let's see in the next video how he has classified all the organisms. Before that, what is the need of classification? It gives a better knowledge and understanding of organisms. It helps to study the organisms in a proper and systematic manner. It helps to make comparisons in an easier way. It helps in understanding the relationship among the organisms and their interdependence. Classification makes our study more focused and helps us to handle a huge population of organisms. It gives us an idea of evolution. How organisms have evolved in nature. Points to remember. Differences that are observed in very closely related populations are called variation. Scientists started classification of organisms depending upon the similarities and differences between them. Classification helps us in exploring the diversity of life forms. Classification of life forms is closely related to their evolution. The warm and humid tropical regions of the earth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn are rich in diversity of plant and animal life. This is called the region of megadiversity. Recall,